It's been a great experience. One major thing that I've come to discover is that now, in the abundance of knowledge, few people, I mean, that's like a better way from the whole AI thing, but I think it's an important point. I've seen that the difference between people who win and people who will not win is curiosity and you willing to learn. That's the bottom
Yeah,
line. You willing to learn. Because now, if you want to learn, you can easily access the information in
yeah,
very creative ways, very personalized ways. It's just up to you to say, you know what, I don't know about this. I want to learn about this. If someone can use WhatsApp, can use social media, and knows what ChatGPT is, when they come and ask like very, very basic questions that they could easily find and read about, right? I don't give them passes. I don't tolerate excuses.
Deep in the soil where the sun don't peak. My heart knows the rhythm the drum birds speak. Roots hold tight, no storm can break. Building a future with each choice I make. Dreams high, but my feet stay low.
Welcome to the program. What up?
what
So,
up?
if you've ever asked ChatGPT a question and you were very unsatisfied, then one, you are not alone, right? We all get in the mix of all of that. And two, it's not the AI, it's the you, all the prompts. So, today we're going to go deep into just
You're
talking
gaslighting us.
about, yes, it's the you. So, we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about how to actually talk to AI, right? Because we all assume AI speaks English, but AI speaks a certain type of English, right? How do we get AI to give us what we want by telling it exactly what we need, right? So let's start with brainstorming. We want to help people brainstorm properly with ChatGPT. And I think of brainstorming as I have some thoughts or I have concepts of a plan. I don't know where to start, but I know my end goal. I know what I want. So I'm curious from the both of you how you treat ChatGPT when you're brainstorming.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned last time, multi-persona prompting that's kind of built on top of chain of thought reasoning. Um, and these are kind of scary terms when you think about them, but in reality, what you're doing is you are allowing your LLM to take on different personalities, so that when it comes up with a brainstorm, it's kind of it's not just you talking to you on a one-on-one. It's literally having a kind of it's like a roundtable discussion, with a panel, and the panel is having conversations, and it's almost like the LLM splits itself into different personas and kind of wears the personas. Because I think one thing that large language models do very well is really, really understand the sort of personality that they're playing. They're very good facades. So, in fact, if you just go to prompting 101, you want to make sure that you firstly set the personality of the prompt, right? So you are a XYZ, and you try to be as detailed in the personality as possible. And then, here's your context, and then finally, here's your task. Those prompts will perform so much better than a prompt that just says, generate this for me, right? Because when you say you are a XYZ, it literally rewires its way of thinking, into, how can I mimic this kind of personality? And, a lot of people would stop there, and great responses from one personality. But what if you can get five personalities in the same sort of thread? Uh, then you start to really unlock new levels of interesting knowledge, that I've seen some crazy results when I brainstormed using this technique. And I sometimes it's like my go-to technique, not all the time, because it is quite time consuming. But when I really, really want something, that I'm struggling with at work, maybe our retention of a feature that we launched is really low, and we're trying to see how do we bring this retention up to, to a higher percentage and things like those. And we've tried everything and it's not working. then I will try to say, hey, here's the scenario that we have. Imagine you are the senior product manager at this company that does this, and this is your level of education, and this is where you graduated from. And then you're also like a senior engineer here, and then you're also maybe the CEO, and then finally you're the minister, whatever. Kind of go in a room and discuss how you're going to solve this problem. And that brainstorming kind of just is mind blowing because all these people have different personalities. And then eventually you get a summarized version of what you should kind of focus on. So yeah, that's kind of like what I would say is if you haven't tried it, try it and let me know.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that's very, very valid. The persona is very key because it defines a lot of things. I don't know if any of you have come across the Raisin framework as well, because it's something that, we are running um, a career accelerator through the Global Shapers community, the Accra Hub, under the World Economic Forum. We won this innovation prize, and we are running this 9-month career accelerator where the goal is that we want to empower the next generation of talents, national service folks. So Jeremiah, for context, national service folks I don't know if you know national service folks, but these are guys who are just done with uni and they go through this 1 year of work, whether it's civil or private organizations take them on. Sometimes it's actually an opportunity for them to actually have a real work experience. They never did an internship and whatnot. So far, the whole national service thing has been downplayed because people are like, well, you go in then and they are sending you on errands, you don't really get to learn. So people go through 1 year work experience. We're supposed to give them, some form of skills and whatnot, but then they come out empty. So that's what we are sort of trying to change. And we realize that it's not really about building technical skills that would get them to excel, right? It's about arming them with the right soft skills so that they're able to self-navigate their careers. And one of the things that we settled on really was curiosity. We did curiosity and then AI prompting. So for the AI prompting session, we walk them through the Raisin framework, and it's sort of like it's in line with what Jeremiah said. In terms of you have to specify the role, you have to give the instructions. So the role is more like acts like XYZ. Then the instructions is what you want the model to do for you. So it's role instructions, steps in terms of if there's a particular pattern that you'd want it to follow, like, okay, probably first of all, do your research in this area, pull research articles, then do XYZ in this area, do this and whatnot. Then the final part is the end goal, which is how do you want the results to look like? So it's a bit confusing because sometimes you don't know what you're looking for, right? So there are cases where you can actually prompt the AI. So let's say I'm trying to write a resume bullet, right? There are cases where I can prompt the AI to show me what a resume bullet is, like an excellent resume bullet that will get me into a particular role. Then it gives me that end goal. Then now I can now pick that up and then go and fix it in the prompt that, okay, at the end of the day, this is what the end goal should look like. So it sets the expectations for the model. And then finally, there's something like novelty. So if you want the model to get very creative, apart from the temperature and all those things, you can tell it to, wander off, get super creative, or it should be restricted in a particular way. Now, this can, play out in different ways. There are cases where you may not use the entire like Raisin framework and whatnot, but then the most important thing is the rule and then the instructions. Now, in the context of brainstorming, there's this professor, Ethan Mollick. He lectures at Wharton, and
I thought you were
he's
gonna say
amazing. Like,
Ethan Waneri.
this is Boderi. Who's that?
Oh my goodness.
Arsenal, bro. Arsenal.
I don't watch football. Oh
The
my
future.
God, I just gave myself away.
It's the future, bro.
You got
It's like, what's Ethan Waneri?
Everybody's the future at Arsenal, I swear.
my God. Anyway, so Ethan Malik, Ethan M, right? Prof. Ethan M, he constantly advises that models like this brainstorming and whatnot, it doesn't come with just one prompt and two prompts. And I think that's what a lot of people do. They just give it a single prompt and they expect to get the best answers. But it actually builds up on context. So what I do with brainstorming is really doing, going through that iteration. So I can go like for 30 minutes and we are literally having a conversation. Another thing that I obsess about is problem definition and setting the context, like Jeremiah mentioned. So typically, because I know the problem could be a lot, it could be fuzzy, right? It might not be even structured. I may not be structuring the problem very well in my head. What I'll typically do is that I set the rule, act as whatever. Then the first thing is help me structure this problem. Then I go into voice recording mode and I just blab. So I can sometimes talk for like 5 minutes, 7 minutes, just talking about everything. And then the model takes it and really structures the problem. Like it brings a lot of clarity on what you really want to solve or what you really want to achieve. And then by getting that, I'm now able to now move ahead and say, okay, what are some information that you need from me that you're probably missing? That's also another thing to make sure that you're building context, because sometimes you may not be able to give all the full context, but then by telling the AI model that, hey, is there anything that you're missing that you would need me to provide? And I think, Anthony, because you're a consultant, and even Jerry, you know this, the 5Ws 1H framework. So I'll tell you that use the 5Ws 1H framework, ask me all the questions that I need to answer. So the what, the why, the where, the when, the who, and then the how, right? It comes in that way. And I give a lot of context-rich answers. So by the time we start delving into the solution, the model knows, like the model is like my right hand man who's been through all the ups and downs with the problem I'm facing, and the solutions that come out are crystal clear. So I'd say the biggest hack for me has been, aside the reason framework, being able to blab about the problem, structure the problem before I even go on and solve it, right, in multiple iterations. And also being able to push the model to tell me, hey, I'm missing this information. Can you give me this information? So that it builds a stronger context on things, because that would mirror reality as much as possible. Then based on that, I know that whatever is coming out of this as output is really solid. So it's not it's a process that could take like 30 minutes. It's not a regular AI prompting, but if you want the AI to give you the best of results that understands you and your context, then you have to go through this mill. So yeah, that's been my biggest hack.
Yeah, I love that. Like these are so diverse. Like the opinions here are so diverse because it gives me a certain perspective around even traditionally, right? How do we get ideas? You can either get ideas from asking an individually, like deeply having a 10-minute conversation with the person, or you can get ideas from hearing people talk. So from what Jeremiah was saying, it looks like you can get AI to get people to talk, and then you get ideas by hearing them talk, right? So that's where you have to define your goal. What exactly are you looking for? And what are the personality types that you're looking to have the conversation so you can get ideas from, right? Now, also on what Joel was mentioning about just talking to an individual deeply, right? And if you're talking to an individual deeply, you also have to define the role. Is this person an expert? So role, then instructions, right? How do you want the person to act? And then you can also define the steps. Now, something else that you mentioned is that you don't only have to think of it as a text input, right?
Yeah.
You say some in text, you can speak in some if your thoughts are unstructured, and use that to refine the process. And lastly, we all think brainstorming as like we are asking the AI something and they are giving us ideas, right? You can also think of it as a two-way, right? Tell the AI to ask you clarifying questions to help structure your thoughts or to help bring out a point. So I think all of these just touch on brainstorming in multiple personalities or brainstorming in one personality that gives you multiple perspectives. What I think we should probably shift into is that, assuming you want to do a detailed research on something, or you want to learn a new thing that you know really fast, how do you approach those two things in ChatGPT right now?
I mean, I probably would use Notebook LLM, um, and that's just facts. Like I would. There was a time where I was trying to crash course into a field that I'd never practically worked in. But so again, I think a lot of the things that we try to do with these large language models are principles that are just basically have been there for hundreds of years around learning. How best do you learn? In this case, some people like me, before I dive deep into the technical details about a subject, I want to have an overview. So I love learning like from conference talks, from podcasts, from things that are not too technical, but are technical enough for me to have an idea of what the heck they're talking about, right? And so if it's interesting for me, then I kind of would want to now start to go into, okay, let me take a course from like Coursera on this particular thing. But I'm not just going to jump into a course on something unless I hear, let's say I want to learn linear algebra or I want to learn calculus, right? Differential calculus or whatever. I'm not just going to jump into that course. I'm going to first hear some TED talk, you know, about how differential calculus is all over the universe and, you know, and some inspiring stuff about how waves are formed and all that stuff, right? And then only then it's like, oh, okay, I feel like I have an intuition about this subject matter. And so when I go into learning it, when you know, even though it's at that point, it's going to be super technical and super abstract, the intuition keeps me focused on the goal of learning. And I think it's the same thing with AI. It's like, okay, I'm trying to, when I'm doing deep research, I'm trying to get AI not to give me the abstract details because I could just go and get a textbook, right? I want AI to kind of give me an intuition behind the topic, and I think it's such a great tool for doing that because it's able to explain to me like I'm a 5 year old, or explain to me like, so for instance, one thing I try to do is, oh, I'm trying to learn this machine learning concept, right? But I'm a software engineer, so explain to me this concept of propagation from a point of view of a software engineer who knows React. And so it'll like, oh, okay, cool. So you understand React, so you understand how state works, right? I'm like, yeah, of course, you know. Okay, so back propagation is if we took the state and then we did. So that to me is like the real superpower of having these AIs, right? Is like to not to kind of do traditional, because I could go read a paper, you know, and spend time highlighting it, you know. But I think AI kind of gives me a more high intuition, right? And then from that high intuition, I can be like, ah, okay, so this is what it kind of makes the research click in your mind. And so when you're going to do the deep stuff, you already have you've formed an intuition. I give an example, a last example. There was a lady, a mom, who was teaching her, I think she was 3 or 4 year old, some math. So, you know, and this is just an example of how different cultures deal with building intuition over highly technical concepts. And so what this lady did was like she would go to the son, who's 3 years old, and be like, hey, what happens when you take one apple and you add another apple? And it's like two apples. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Let's take two apples and let's add one apple. What do you get? And the kid would come and say, three apples. And it was like going on and on and on. And then one day they're sat on the dinner table and the father comes home. And then this lady's like, okay, so let's take 2/3 and let's add 1/3. What do you get? And the dad was like, wait, hold up. This is too much, right? Like, there's no way this kid, why are you teaching this kid's fraction? And the mom was like, chill, let him answer. And you know what the kid said? 3/3. It's like, okay, 2/3 and 1/3 is 3/3. So the kid understood intuitively the idea of thirds, not from the way that we're taught, because we're taught from a technical point of view, which kind of just is, it's abstract. So when you're taught 2/3 and 1/3, now you're in your head thinking, okay, 1/3, and then 1/2, then I lift the two, and then the kid's not thinking like that. The kid's just thinking, oh, 2/3 is just a unit. You know, it's just a unit like an apple. It's just two of them. And there's one third, which is just one of them. And they're all thirds. And when I put them together, I make 3/3. And that culture of learning, just shifting the intuition, can shape your understanding of these technical terms more deeply. I think we have an opportunity with AI to kind of reshape how we even approach learning in general.
Dope, dope.
Very dope.
Also, do you also get the summary first, right? The end goal or the broad idea from 30 feet, and then you go deep, right? Is that what you do too, or like how do
Yeah.
you approach that?
For that concept, so I would usually use that, especially if I'm on the creativity side, right? And I don't have any domain knowledge about the thing, then I'm gonna probably, ask it to generate something so that I see what the output would typically look like. Um, but then when it comes to research, I do more of like understanding how to do something and then getting it done. So guess what? For the past month or two, I wrote an article on the agile stuff, right? So for the past month or two, I just had to learn all of this, on ChatGPT in terms of like understanding the metrics and all those things because I was like, yeah, we've been able to run this process. We've been able to switch from Scrum to Kanban. Also, when I had to switch from Scrum to Kanban, I had never done configuration of Jira, right? But then I just got to learn how to set up workflows, how to set up statuses, how to set up the rules, the transitions, and all of that stuff. And it was just because, yes, I was curious. I was like, hey, act like a scrum master and then school me on how to do X, Y, Z. And then we literally just went through and it was just explaining everything to me bit by bit, bit by bit. And I was able to get it. So the bottom line really is I've not done a lot of deep research things where maybe I want to produce a technical document and whatnot. But then I've done more around, okay, I want to get this thing done. Can you teach me? So when we hired a back-end engineer on the team, he had to do an appraisal of the state of our backend, right? And come up with solutions. So he had a Confluence page, giant table with about 20 issues, and it was all technical. I was like, what the hell is this? So then I picked it up, went to feed that into ChatGPT, and I was like, explain to me like I'm five. Take me through each of them before you move on to the next. I need to prompt you that I clearly understand before you move. And guess what? I was able to blaze through all of that stuff. Like I had a clear understanding of the problems and most importantly, the impact on the product side. So the future of learning is really personalized learning. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes down to where there's a unified system where the system knows a lot about you so much that just by asking a particular question, even if you don't set a particular context, because I'm different from Anthony and Anthony is different from Jeremiah, the kind of
Mm,
output we get different, right?
mm,
But then it really sits within our frame of thought, our frame of thinking, mainly because the AI understands those personal bits about us and is able to bring all of that into that picture. And that's exactly what we want to do with Mandy, because then the whole idea is that if it has knowledge about you, it becomes the best advisor. It's all about the context, right? It becomes the best advisor and it's able to help you at any point in time. So most of the learning that I've done, from learning Kanban reporting to understanding how to set up, Kanban boards from Scrum, all the workflows and all those things, to understanding the depth of technical knowledge, where I was not going to bother engineers to say, hey, explain this to me and all of that. I was able to do all of this by just, putting in the prompt, like defining the role, and most importantly, feeding the information that I want to be taught. And it's been a great experience. One major thing that I've come to discover is that now, in the abundance of knowledge, few people, I mean, that's like a bit away from the whole AI thing, but I think it's an important point. I've seen that the difference between people who win and people who will not win is curiosity and you willing to learn. That's the bottom
yeah.
line. You willing to learn. Because now, if you want to learn, you can easily access the information in
Yeah.
very creative ways, very personalized ways. It's just up to you to say, you know what, I don't know about this. I want to learn about this. So now I don't give people excuses. If someone can use WhatsApp, can use social media, and knows what ChatGPT is, they come and ask like very, very basic questions that they could easily find and read about, right? I don't give them passes. I don't tolerate excuses on that. So, yeah, pretty much that's how I structure my learning flow, being able to, say act like, 5-year-old or go through the steps, practice, iterate, come back, and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. And it's, to be honest, it's fun. It is fun.
One thing I did want to bring up is a crazy experiment that I want to make, which is imagine if you had a social media where the bots are the content creators and the humans are the commenters.
Like, just based on what you guys are saying, you have the opportunity to dumb everything down, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the typical way to dumb it down is that explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. You can also do a progressive complexity, right? Explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old,
And then a
like
10-year-old.
I'm a 10-year-old high school dropout, CEO of a company, CEO in
Yep.
another domain, right? You also have the opportunity to bring it home, right? Like if you take a concept that is not in your domain, you can ask it to relate this concept to your domain. In February, there was a big trade that happened, like in the NBA. Everybody was crazy about it. Like there's this guy called Luka Doncic. He got traded from the Mavs. I didn't understand anything, right? Because I'm not NBA. So I asked it to explain this to me in football terms, and the explanation it gave was that I should assume that Manchester United traded Garnacho for Luka Modric, like at Real Madrid. And all of a sudden, like I got it. I got it. Like so someone is trading experience for high potential. And it's just based on the need. So you can use that to bring it down. And the third thing I wanted to point out is that it looks like you can start here and then do deep research, right, on a particular area, knowing what you want. And even Jeremiah added something like you can probably export a deep research PDF and put it in Google LLM notebook and get a podcast out of it, like 80 minutes, 90 minutes. That could still tie into everything we're talking about. So
Yeah, because I think
Jeremiah,
I think in general, I think the biggest problem is not that we can't research, right, on our own. And then the biggest problem is that we research on the wrong thing and we waste so much time researching on the wrong thing. And I think that's where the LLM is there to just kind of give you the right thing to research on or to spend time on, right? And this thing could be really extrapolated even across your career, right? So, if you choose the wrong career, like it could take you a long time to kind of recalibrate that. And so I think what you want with these LLMs, maybe not as much in a deep research part, but it's just the guidance part because, it will tell you new things. Like, if you are into, I don't know, pharmacy, it will give you different branches of pharmacy that you would never have uh, thought about in your limited scope of academics, right? So even the people that you meet, they're all biased towards a certain type of pharmacy. But if you do enough of that curiosity that you're talking about, Anthony, then it will take you to a sort of Chinese type of pharmacy that you've never heard of. And that could open up opportunities for you to actually do more research there. That kind of creates more opportunities for you in general. And that's kind of like my kind of summary from everything that people have spoken about.
all right. So all we want to tell you is to prompt better and just
All you
prompt
need is
right because
one
you have
prompt. That's
one
my
prompt.
that's my quote. Now
Yeah,
now
that's a
said
wrap.
all I need is one mic. So
Yeah, I know, right?
and
At least I
I
caught
could
on
change the
that. I
world.
was not lost.
Yeah, so
At
all I
least
need
I
is
was
one
not lost.
prompt.
Yes.
Exactly.
Deep in the soil where the sun don't peak. My heart knows the rhythm the drum birds speak. Roots hold tight, no storm can break. Building a future with each choice I make.